Just ahead on American Black Journal, an up-close look at how low-income African Americans feel about job opportunities in the new economy. Plus, we'll celebrate the contributions of female authors, and we'll remember award-winning journalist Susan Watson. Don't go away. American Black Journal starts now.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support also provided by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first. The Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The DTE Foundation proudly supports 50 years of American Black Journal in covering African American history, culture, and politics. The DTE Foundation and American Black Journal, partners in presenting African American perspectives about our communities and in our world.
Also brought to you by Ally, Nissan Foundation, and viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. As technology careers grow and manufacturing jobs decline, how are disadvantaged African Americans trying to navigate this new economy? That's the question addressed in a book titled From the Edge of the Ghetto, African Americans and the World of Work. The book examines how African Americans living outside of big cities view their situations and the skills needed to do the types of jobs that may be available. The research is based on interviews with 100 low-income African Americans living in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Joining me now is the author, Alfred Young Jr., a professor at the University of Michigan. Welcome to American Black Journal.
Thank you so much.
So this is a fascinating topic for a number of reasons, but one is the focus on a place like Ypsilanti, which I think doesn't get a lot of attention. When people think of African Americans and the issues that they face, they think of African Americans in places like Detroit, big cities. But Ypsilanti is also a place where there is a very large African American population, and their challenges look a little different, according to your book.
Indeed. In fact, I got to Ypsilanti in what I thought was going to be on my way to Detroit.
Yeah, right.
To do yet another project on African Americans in a very big city. And I found myself in a small city with a lot of issues to look at and think about. And a city that was uniquely situated in between Detroit and Ann Arbor. And so two very different stories of what work could be, what work had been. One more of a statement of what work in the past was. Ann Arbor more of a statement of what work in the future will be. So I thought, I'll camp down right here and talk to some people.
And so what did you find with folks?
The core finding is that people were really stuck on images of the past. When I asked them about good jobs for them, good jobs they hoped would come to them, it was almost always tied to an automobile industry that is no more. And almost in the middle of the process, I began to think more deeply about what they weren't talking about. And they weren't talking about technology. They weren't talking about automation. They weren't talking about the domains that present to many people the opportunities for today and tomorrow.
One of the ironies is not just the proximity to Ann Arbor and the University of Michigan, where you've got all of this sort of future unfolding in terms of work, but right there in Ypsilanti, M-City is at Willow Run, which was the old plant that employed people for many, many years, but has now become this hub of technology and the future. It's so close, but still so far from those folks.
And so far in the sense that, I could have taken a bicycle ride from either my home or my office to where the research took place. So that I'm an Ann Arbor resident. So that's how close I was to the communities. But the imagination of what's familiar, what's desirable, what's interesting, doesn't at all map on to geographic proximity. And so people would talk about technology, but really didn't have a grasp of what technology would mean to them. Some would say, well, things will be better because there's technology, people won't make decisions. Others would say things will be worse
Yeah.
because it's technology. People aren't making decisions.
People aren't deciding.
But in
yeah.
both cases, not a real sense of what this technology could mean for them, how they'd fit into that world, even if they could run a few miles
Right.
into Ann Arbor.
Right, to get there.
And be connected to it.
Can you draw some distinctions between African Americans who are in this situation and white Americans who are in this situation? I mean, I would imagine if you went to other places that are sort of between the two cities that had larger white populations, you might find some of the same dynamics, but not exactly.
I
right?
think in that case, a lot of similarities and challenges to relating to the modern economy and the modern world of work. I think what lingers for African Americans is a particular cultural history of relating to work and images of hope and possibility around work.
Yeah.
Right. So for a lot of folks, maybe the industrial era was seen as a stepping stone to something. For Black Americans, that was it. They made it when they got to the plant.
Right.
And the sense of what should happen thereafter, what could happen for us, very different understandings then.
Yeah.
Even some of the conversations today that talk about the green economy and the opportunities around the green economy for African Americans in Ypsilanti and in other parts of Michigan for that matter, that's back on the farm.
Yeah.
That's Jim Crow and slavery and all those kinds of things.
Right.
And so there's culture and history that come together that make for a very different story for African Americans, even if a whole lot of people from working class and low-income backgrounds are struggling to make sense of today.
What role are the schools in places like Ypsilanti playing in trying to turn that around for the next generation of African Americans who are going to need to understand this a lot better?
It's an immense challenge. It's an immense challenge. Because there's choice now, students can go where they want to go.
Right.
And so it means that the students who have the opportunities for the best possible education or have parents that can position them don't have to rely upon Ypsilanti itself. Right?
Yeah.
It's a struggle for the school system given that. Talent can move wherever. The people I talked to really didn't make a clear distinction between what having a high school degree or diploma meant as opposed to not having. Right? So there's even a sense of moving up the hierarchy of educational opportunity, less relevant for people that just simply want to figure out what they can do, how they can do it, and be comfortable.
Yeah, and of course this connects to poverty, which Ypsilanti knows a lot and quite well. It's one of those things that leads, I think, to the intergenerational nature of poverty, that because my father does not take advantage of the way the economy is growing when he's an adult, that holds me back from opportunities when I grow
They're
up.
just, for the people, and many of them were in their 30s, or rather in their 20s, not very far into their 30s, so, relatively young adults. Not a lot of conversation about what was told about opportunity.
Yeah.
The prior generations were in the plant.
Right.
Or working in the service sector around that. So the kind of common sense conversations that many would have with their college attending children, with parents that went to college, just weren't a part of the conversation.
They don't happen, yeah. So what are some of the solutions that you see we need to be thinking about?
In the first case, a re-education of a young adult population. And there are efforts to do some of that, but not on a larger scale effort. I think it's hard for people to understand what economic transformation is and how it's unfolding.
How you become part of it.
So even the discussion of the green economy, if that's going to take hold and grow and develop in the way that it has in some parts of the country, some parts of the state, it means some people understand that's a different moment than what grandma, grandpa did, in the South.
Right.
So the intervention is not simply an increase in job placement, but in educational opportunities to understand the modern world of work. And to think about what credentials and resources one needs to fit in.
Yeah. Okay. Well, congratulations on the work. It really is fascinating.
Thank you very much. I
Thanks
learned
for
a whole lot
joining us.
about people from a very small city.
Yeah. All right, up next, encouraging women to follow their literary dreams. But first, here's a 1999 American Black Journal interview with Sherry McGee, the founder of the Apple Book Center in Detroit.
We opened Apple Book Center in 1996, and we opened at a time when independently owned and operated bookstores were dropping out like flies, literally. Of the 11,000 or so registered independently owned and operated bookstores, they were closing at a rate of about 200 per year, according to the American Booksellers Association. They were being overtaken, and just overwhelmingly overtaken, by the superstore concept and the World Wide Web, or the threat of the World Wide Web, making reading a book an obsolete thing to do. So we opened at a time when that was very real and very prevalent in the industry. I saw it differently, though. I saw what I'm doing here at Apple Book Center as a microcosm of that. I don't have a superstore in my neighborhood. There's not a superstore within 6 miles of that location, yet I find it to be a very viable community to have a bookstore in.
Some would say that Apple Book Center is a superstore in their community.
Yeah.
How you got that building into that shopping plaza is a story in and of itself.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I wish I could say that it was done by scientific methodology, but what really happened is a good friend of mine called and says, there's a great location, you might want to go take a look at it. I did. I called the number on the for lease sign in the window. They asked me how old my business was. I explained that it was just being incorporated, that we were still applying for the bank financing, and I could tell that they weren't very interested in that. But because I don't take no for an answer, I kind of casually asked before he hung up, who owns the real estate. He explained that Henry Ford Health System owned it. I wrote the CFO of Henry Ford Health System a letter and asked if I could share with him an idea that I had for that location that would be a win-win-win for Henry Ford, for the community, and for the entrepreneur behind it, me. And he not only read the letter, but he took my call when I called, and he saw me, and I told him I wanted to start the first Apple Book Center right there on the northwest side of Detroit, and that I would be promoting reading, and I shared with him some of the activities and some of the ideas I had for a marketing plan. And he said, I think reading is very important. How can I help you have this happen?
The month of March celebrates reading and women's history, so it's a great time to recognize the literary contributions of women. My next guests are encouraging women to follow their literary dreams of writing and publishing a book. Here to tell us more is Elizabeth Mays, who is the president and CEO of Mays Multimedia. Her company has published more than 200 books written by women. She's joined by one of these published authors, Claude Greene Jackson. Thank you both for being here.
Absolutely, thank you.
So tell us about the idea of being able to publish 200 books by women. That number's overwhelming.
Right? Yeah, and it's been over several years. So I took over my family's business back in 2011, which at that time was called Mays Printing, and we changed into a multimedia company. So about 2 years ago, I was in a predicament of my company where I was like, okay, it's time to take it to another level, and I started thinking about going back to my roots. So a lot of people don't know, but my grandfather, when he started Mays Printing, it actually was called Valley Publishing Company.
Right.
And in the midst of having that conversation with my father, I was like, I think I want to start a publishing company, and I really want to make sure that we are really gearing towards telling the stories of authors. Where before we had published, several books before, but it wasn't really a really strong pursuit. So when we marketed Valley Publishing Company, it's definitely been soaring like the wind.
Yeah.
And my overall goal is to make sure that I'm able to work with not only just women, but also women and men, and also institutions to publish books and literary works.
Yeah. The last time you were on the show, I think we were talking about the idea of businesses sort of moving from one generation to the next, and how they do that, and how they sort of preserve themselves. I mean, this is a really innovative way to keep that going, and as you point out, it was not just your father, it's your grandfather who started this business.
Most definitely, and a lot of the authors that we are working with are sometimes much older, so they've been working on these books for several years, and I can't tell you how many times I meet individuals and they're like, I've been wanting to write a book, or I've had a book in me, and I started my book, and I just don't know what to do next. And I've been studying publishing now, I'll say more heavily for the past 3 to 4 years, so that I'm constantly being able to educate, inspire, and motivate individuals to write and also publish their books. So we work with authors, creatives, writers, historians, anywhere from ghostwriting to editing to layout to format to cover design to printing, and also post-marketing materials.
Wow.
Yes,
wow.
It's a plethora of products that we offer.
Yeah. Claude Greene, tell us about your book.
My book is called The Butterfly, and it's based on a poem in the book, The Butterfly. It's a book of poetry. I say poetry and more because there's a section about getting older because I'm 80, and that was daunting for me to publish a book at age 80, but Elizabeth made it much easier for me. She laid out a blueprint for how to get it done. It's my 4th book, but I thought I was too old. But I'm not too old.
No
and
such thing as that.
it has given me new energy. There's also a section of scriptures that helped me. And there's a section by my husband, who was a member of the Spinners, something that he wrote, poems that he wrote. So that's why it's poetry and more.
Yeah, talk a little more about your husband and the role he played with the
Purvis
Spinners.
Jackson was the bass singer of the Spinners, and he was the one that always promoted my writing. Purvis Jackson Jr. is handicapped by autism. He's 44. He still can't read or write or talk or live independently, but the beautiful butterfly on the cover of the book is his artwork. Now, he didn't draw the butterfly. We had the butterfly form, but it's his art that makes the butterfly's design.
Wow, wow. And I see you have a butterfly pendant on today, or a necklace, right?
It's 30 years old. It was broken. I fixed it, repurposed it.
Yeah. What for you is the significance of that figure, the butterfly?
The butterfly, well, we know how the butterfly starts, don't we?
Right, as a caterpillar.
Right, and the poem, The Butterfly, is about the caterpillar that's trying to get out of the cocoon, and then somebody helps him, and then he can't fly, because the getting out of the cocoon is what makes the butterfly's wings strong enough to fly.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Very cool.
So I say that's unfulfilled destiny.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Nice.
Talk about how the challenges that the publishing industry is facing everywhere right now sort of affect what you're doing.
Yeah, most definitely. So publishing companies can range from, doing primarily only print, and then some industries actually are heavy in, maybe more audio books and ebooks. We've actually merged every element necessary and possible. And the reason why, because I understand that, print has started to decline drastically over the years, but it still is not going to replace the fact that people want that tangible, hard
A lot of people
book.
need that.
They need that
feel, that tactile.
You need that
experience.
tactile, and I highly encourage individuals to always make sure that they have enough prints, because you never know if you want to sell online. You want to have vendor fairs, you want to have book signings. So we work in the arena of book printing, audiobooks, ebooks. So regardless of whatever medium it is that you want, we ensure that we're able to transcribe that.
Yeah. What about the barriers to people believing that they can be writers and that they should be published? I feel like that's one of the things, especially in the African American community, that we run into a lot.
Right. I mean, everyone has a story. Everyone has an experience. Everyone has grown up in a particular area, especially one of my clients, Detroit. This book called The Detroiters by Marsha Music, and it's an anthology to Detroit. And this is a story that's only she could tell.
Yeah.
Based upon growing up in Highland Park and being able to
Marsha Music well, right? Yeah.
Amazing woman. And she's only able to tell this story the way she wrote it. And I encourage individuals that it's really not about just feeling like, oh, I don't know if I have enough time or if I have enough popularity. My thing is that that's the one form of legacy that you're able to continue and carry on generation to generations. I still have books from my grandfather that, especially one in particular, when my grandfather was he was a Tuskegee Airman, we still have his logbook. And these are images of the pilots and things that they were doing and stories that they were telling. And this is something we get to carry on to the next generation. So if you don't start, then how would you know what actually you can produce?
Yeah. Claude Greene, talk about your path to becoming a writer and being confident about being a writer.
Well, we won't say confident, but the things that I write, I believe in, and that's part of it. And as a retired teacher, this is Women's History Month and it's Reading Month, so it's an honor for me to be on your show at this time. But Paul Laurence Dunbar, Maya Angelou, Langston Hughes, suppose they hadn't written. Look at what we would have lost and what we would have missed out on. Now, I say if you have a story in you, get a spiral notebook and just start writing, or get a tape recorder. And you may not be doing it to get published, but just do it, whether you publish it or not.
Yeah. So when you're starting to think of what you're going to write, talk about your process. How do you get it down and get it out of you?
If there's a poem in me, it has to come out. One of my favorite poems in the book is one of my newest. It's called The Big 8-0, because at 80 years, I finally feel big. So it's called The Big 80. And I have a poem in there that I wrote when I was 65. So this book has been a long time in coming, but if you're writing things down, you have them for when you're ready to share them with the world. Yeah. And I'm so old now that I'd better share.
No, because my next question is, what's your next book, right? You're not going to stop now.
Well, I have a children's book that's already written from when I was teaching, that my students and I wrote together. So I don't know whether I'll get that published or not, but it's there.
Yeah, well, maybe Elizabeth can,
we would
can help you
Yeah, we're
out
going to
with
work
that.
together diligently throughout the process.
All right.
Yeah, and Claude Greene is one of my clients where she's an example of someone who had a story, who wanted to write it, and we happened to run into each other at an event and followed through, did a consultation, and I do one-on-one consultations with anyone who's interested in just understanding the process, how to build the momentum and how to stay on track.
Yeah. All right. Well, congratulations, and thanks
you.
for both of you being here.
I appreciate it.
Finally today, we at American Black Journal are remembering our former colleague, Susan Watson, who passed away at the age of 76. She was an award-winning journalist who spent 30 years as a reporter, editor, and columnist at the Detroit Free Press. She was also a regular on this program in the 1980s, providing commentary on a number of topics.
Now, Free Press columnist Susan Watson joins us with her commentary.
Chauffeur-driven cars for school board members. Bus repair contracts awarded without proper bidding procedures. Blacks convicted of bribery and conspiracy in the awarding of a city contract. A school official in Florida goes to jail for trying to use school money to buy gold-plated plumbing fixtures for his home. The list goes on and on. Blacks are targeted by the government and the media for doing the same kinds of things that whites have been doing for years. The only difference, some say, is that blacks got caught. Well, give me a break. Who are you trying to kid? Of course the white establishment, which includes the media, is going to take a harder look at blacks, to hold blacks up to a higher standard, while at the same time expecting blacks to fail, expecting blacks to live up to, or maybe I should say down to, the notion of black inferiority. Well, my friends, that is the nature of racism. It's not new, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. Any black person who is not aware of this double standard is nothing but a fool. A black person has to be like Caesar's wife. You have to be above suspicion. I'm not saying this is fair. It's not, but it's reality. Sometimes it seems that blacks ignore that fact once they have achieved success. Give somebody a good job, maybe even a little title, and all too often that person forgets that even in 1986, blacks still must be better than the competition in both moral and professional terms. As long as we remain black in this society, there always will be someone waiting for us to fail. It's like my mother used to say, as long as you live, don't forget you're black, because white folks certainly won't.
For me, Susan Watson's fierce and witty analysis, as well as her majestic storytelling about the city of Detroit, made her one of the most explicit templates for the column that I would grow up to write. Watson made us laugh and think, and she thrilled us with literary flourish. Her column spoke to everyone, and she spoke for those who hadn't had mainstream access to our region's most powerful platforms. No one captured life in this city and the region the way she did. No one has since. I chuckle really hard when I hear people talk about who's the voice of Detroit. Susan was, Susan is, and she will be forever. That's our program for today. Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guests at AmericanBlackJournal.org. And as always, you can connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll see you next time.